Well, good morning. I will call our April meeting of Central Oklahoma Transportation and Parking Authority to order. We've got a kind of a very special beginning to our meeting this morning, and I'm really pleased to make this presentation. So if you'll just give me a minute, I'll come down front. This is special for everybody. 24 years of serving the city and serving the Cotpa board. A couple other boards, I guess you're on, but we were your favorite one. Oh, okay.
You had the most interesting issues.
Well, and I will say what I always appreciated when I came to the meeting, you were always the first one here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, you were, you know. And the other thing, I remember running into you at Ishams a couple years ago, and I thought, well, if I get in trouble in the carts, at least I got my turn here. So, but anyway, I think this was to thank you for being a part of our journey, and it has been a real journey with everything embarked, the river cruises, Spokies, and parking in the streetcar.
It has.
So, and I keep thinking someday I'm going to retire too, but then another project comes along like the parking garage. Well, I'll see that one through, you know, or something. But anyway, I hope this is just a little memento of our appreciation for all your years of service. And
thank you very much.
now, I've always asked at retirement, when some of the employees retire, what would you do? What could the board do better? Or what could, so.
Hire more attorneys.
Oh. All right.
I've really appreciated working with everyone. I've had a great time. Cotpa did, or embarked now, provided a host of issues from 13C to procurement issues to buying garages and selling garages and putting out streetcars and buying little bitty trolleys when the feds didn't want us to. They wanted big buses, so, and ADA issues. So I've really had a good time, and I thank you very much.
We appreciate you looking after us and taking care of us, and hope you have fun in retirement. I hear you're going to travel, and you're training your dog, and so that may be a full-time job. So, well, have fun. Enjoy it. All right. Do we have any citizens to be heard this morning? If not, I would have a motion to approve our minutes of our March 1st board meeting.
I move approval.
All right. All in favor? Say aye. Thank you. Opposed? And then we have minutes of our parking committee meeting held March 14th. I have a motion to approve. All in favor? Say aye. Thank you. And one item from the chairman, since James is here, I have not had an opportunity to congratulate him on his election, and so congratulations. And consent docket, we've got 6 items on the consent docket. I don't know if there's any that the trust would like any explanation of or discussion of.
Move the items.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Items for individual consideration. We have several items, and item A is adoption of a resolution to approve the Title VI program for fiscal year 2019-22. And I guess Chris was going to give us a little presentation on this.
Good morning.
Good morning. Chip.
Chip Nolan, and I'll be presenting your Title VI plan update today. There's a lot of information included, but I'll try and get through it as quickly as I can. So this is a plan we have to submit to the FTA every 3 years to stay in compliance. And this is just the most recent update that's due to the FTA. Slides, just a reminder, everyone watching, what we talk about. We're talking about Title VI. Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 says we'll not discriminate based on race, color, or national origin. And the FTA has given us administrative guidelines on how we're supposed to carry that out. So there's kind of two sections to this presentation. There's what I call general requirements. These are requirements of any recipient of FTA funds, regardless of size. And then later on in the presentation, I'll get into more requirements that are specific to larger transit agencies, which we would fall under. So we'll go through these. These are pretty similar to past Title VI plan submissions. There's not a lot of new information here. We'll go ahead and go through each one of these in more detail. Our notice to the public notifies individuals of their rights under Title VI. We post this on all of our vehicles, transit center, and our notice boards. It's translated into the pertinent languages of our service area, which are English, Spanish, Vietnamese, and Chinese. And it's how to contact us through our website, phone number, or email on how to report a Title VI related complaint. And we talk about, there's a section that talks about complaints, Title VI related complaints. If there were any Title VI related lawsuits during the previous 3 years, there weren't, but if there were, we would include a summary of that. We also include copies of our complaint form, and again, how to contact us and make Title VI related complaints. This portion is new. Marketing department put together a great, what we're calling a public engagement plan. It goes into detail about each one of these and talks about what public engagement means for Embark. So it goes through types of outreach, so it defines in more detail what we say when we mean public outreach. So it defines things like open houses, community meetings, board meetings, committee meetings, public hearings, what each one of those are, and what that means. Meeting times, locations, and accessibility. This says that we try and have all of our meetings in locations that are accessible to individuals with disabilities. And they're also accessible to people that rely on public transit. And then additionally, we'll try to provide those meetings at different times and locations throughout our service area to maximize attendance. We talk about public notices, what those are, what they contain, where we post them. Communication methods, talks about all of our different communication methods that we use. It talks about our website, social media, paid advertisements, focus groups, printed materials, news releases, surveys, and just all the different ways that we try and communicate with our citizens and our riders. Visualization, this talks about the technology we may be using at our public meetings, talks about the way we communicate to our citizens and our riders to maximize effective communication so that everyone understands what we're presenting. So it talks about we may be using things like the projector, maps, different types of graphics, and how we communicate the information during those meetings. And limited English proficiency. This talks about the pertinent languages that we translate into. This uses census data to identify certain language groups that meet a threshold, and then we translate we offer translation into those languages for our printed materials. Board representation, we talk about how the city's process for recruiting individuals to participate in our boards and committees and what that looks like. Subrecipient monitoring, the City of Edmond is a subrecipient of ours, and as such we have some of the similar oversight and technical assistance responsibilities that for them that the FTA has for us. And so as part of that, we included their Title VI plan in our Title VI plan submittal to the FTA. And so the City of Edmond has a compliant Title VI plan. They do a great job. So I just included a copy of that plan within our plan so the FTA can see it. So this section talks about, so some of this is newer. This is sections for larger transit agencies. The larger transit agencies defined as having a population in excess of 200,000 in your service area, and you have more than 50 vehicles in peak service. And so the streetcar put us over that threshold this time. Before our buses were at 48 or 49 buses in peak service. So the streetcar put us into this new reporting requirement. We've been monitoring and reporting this data internally for a long time, but it's just a new component in the Title VI plan. And again, I'll go into more detail about each one of these in the next few slides. So service standards and policies, this talks about our headway, so how frequently a bus comes by when you're standing at a bus stop. Load, this talks about how full are our buses and do we have any capacity issues. On-time performance, service availability, vehicle assignment, and distribution of transit amenities. So this is a route classification. So this, in the left column you have the route. Next column is a classification of minority or non-minority route. A minority route is defined as having more than a third of its revenue miles going through census block groups that have above average minority population for our service area. So it predominantly serves minority communities, and it would be designated as a minority route. And then that just breaks down how we came up with that analysis. We use census data to determine these numbers. So for headways, we look at our standard for weekday service is we strive for 30-minute service on all of our weekday routes. I highlighted the few routes that don't quite meet that standard yet in yellow. And then weeknight, weekend, it's 60 minutes. Load, this looks at a lot of numbers here, but this just looks at the number of seats, the number of buses on the route, the number of seats in those buses compared to the ridership, and if we have if we're close to being over capacity on any of our routes. So if we're standing room only on any of our buses, that would show up on this report, and we would try and address that. But we have sufficient capacity on all of our routes, and none of our routes are at or over capacity. On-time performance, our standard is 75%. Our system-wide average for January, we did meet that standard. Some are a little bit above that, and some are a little bit below that, but we did meet our standard of 75% on-time performance for January. So service availability, this talks about where our routes go and who we serve. So middle column there talks about service area population. This is the population for our service area, which is defined as City of Oklahoma City, Midwest City, and Spencer. And then on the right, you have the percentage of minority, non-minority, and then low-income populations within our service area. And as you can see, we do a good job of serving the low-income and minority populations within our community. Vehicle assignment, this looks at, so here we have the size of the bus assigned to the route. We have two of our routes have a smaller bus assigned to them. Route 19 is a small bus assigned to it based on lower ridership, and Route 50 is a smaller bus assigned to it so it can maneuver better in the downtown area. And then the two columns to the right talk about the average age of the bus assigned to that route, and then the average age of the bus in our fleet, making sure that we're not concentrating our newer buses in certain areas. So this is assignment. This is transit amenities. So this table looks at bus shelters specifically. So this, the minimum standard for what we would recommend for a bus shelter is when a bus stop exceeds 10 boardings per day. Again, that's our minimum standard for what we think should have a bus shelter. And so this looks at the number of bus stops that exceed that standard and the number of shelters we've deployed in our system. Again, we do a pretty good job, as you can see, putting bus shelters out throughout our system. There's a few more spots that we would like to see shelters at, but overall, I think we're doing a good job. So this is some demographic information. Again, this looks at the population that makes up our service area for Oklahoma City, Midwest City, and Spencer. Overall, we have a minority population of 41% and a low-income population of just under 17%. And I included maps of those two groups. So this is the map of our minority populations in the light blue. So these are areas that exceed the minority population average, and then the low-income areas. And then I also included excerpts from our ETC survey, our annual rider survey that we do, that also collects demographic information that the FTA requests us to provide. So I included that as well. This portion is newer. This is an update of our existing major change policy or service change policy. So this updates what we would consider a major service change as any new route or a 25% addition, reduction, or change in the number of service hours or miles for a route. So this is important to define what a major service change is, because when we have a major service change, we're required to do an equity analysis to make sure that the service changes are not disproportionately impacting low-income or minority populations. So when we have a major service change, we do an equity analysis. That also applies to fare changes. We have any fare change of any kind, we have to do a fare equity analysis to make sure that our fare changes are not disproportionately affecting minority or low-income populations. And then we also included a summary of the previous 3 years. Since we submit this plan to the FTA every 3 years, we kind of give them an update of what the previous 3 years look like in terms of service changes and public outreach. And so our next steps, with your approval today, we'll submit this to the FTA for their review, incorporate any changes they may have for us, and then continue to monitor and enforce the plan over the next 3 years until we have to submit it again. So it was a lot of information, but thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions?
Yes. Wonderful. Thank you. Very important. I don't think I quite understood until today, till your presentation, that Title VI was the result of the Civil Rights Act. I'm sorry for not knowing that, but that's really important. So, a couple things I was wanting to ask about. One, is it possible I can get a map, that minority population map?
Sure, of course.
I would love to see that for my own office, just so I get a better sense of these populations. Also, do we have any data yet on minority ridership when it comes to, now that we've added Sunday service and the 5 night routes that we have? Do we have data on that, like who's riding the bus?
We do. So it's one of the benefits, one of the many benefits of the annual rider survey that we do. Michael can correct me, but the surveyors were out here, I think last month, just a few weeks ago, on the buses collecting surveys from all of our riders. And then they're compiling that data now, and then we'll probably have ETC out in a couple of months to give you a presentation on what the newest rider survey looks like.
Okay, so I think that will be very helpful. And then for me personally, can I get a copy from what you're submitting of the route data? I guess I don't need the whole presentation that you're sending, but I'd really like to see those.
Sure, and I can follow up with you later if you want to go through it in more detail, or
yes.
Just let me know specific questions you may have. I can certainly go through that with you later.
Yeah, I mean, I think this probably goes without saying, but just a few years before the Civil Rights Act is Rosa Parks on a bus, right? Mm-hmm. And so this data is very important, and the work that you all have set in motion for all these years is very important. I would say vital, in fact, what you all are doing. So thanks for this, and
sure,
would love to talk more about it. Thank you.
Anything else?
All right. Any other questions? Then do I have a motion to approve item A, and so you can submit it to the...
Thank you.
Approval. Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Item B is change order number 2 to Santa Fe parking garage. I guess some of our demolition for not the retail space, but the university space.
Yeah, so the project for improving that space for UCO continues. Again, this is change order number 2. You'll notice it's actually a deduct. Overall, it's a reduction of $23,658. Attached to the memo describing the change order is a document provided by Beck Design, the architect, and it goes through each of the 10 items that are part of this change order. I would just mention that really the most significant one is replacing some steel panels and insulation that were planned for outside vestibules with more of a insulated foam type material. So that's a decrease of over $28,000. The other thing I'd mention with this change order is that UCO in particular, we've really been working to try to value engineer this project, understanding our budgetary constraints. And so by having this deduct change order, in anticipation, with these projects, you never know what we might run into. There could be future change orders. So we now have, with this deduct, a little bit of room in the budget for any other unexpected expenses that might come along. Does not add any more time to the project, though.
So we're getting close to completion, I mean, or moving ahead.
We're moving ahead, and hopefully, we're looking at, mid-July into July for, actually July 19th, but, the exact date on a construction project is kind of risky to go with.
The university's anxious to get in there and get it completed, so.
Yeah.
All right, do I hear a motion to approve item B?
Move the item.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Item C is approval of a request for proposal for parking consultant services and to authorize the administrator to advertise and release an RFP. And I guess kind of the gist of it's an operational audit and a revenue audit and a review of our parking contractor for fees and incentives. So.
Yeah, and really with this item and approval of issuing this RFP, it's really a continuation of the trust's and staff's due diligence and just overseeing the management and operation of our off-street parking system. As you'll recall, we had an independent audit done a couple of years ago. I think that audit finished up in 2017. Again, as you mentioned, Chairman, we looked at the operations, we looked at some of our financial policies and our cash handling and reconciliation, and we expect to do that same type of audit again this time. One difference is that we are going to be looking for a multi-year contract, which we're hoping will save us, a little bit of money in terms when it comes time to negotiations. But our plan is to continue to do these independent audits about every other year, and then depending on the results of those audits, some may be more significant or more intensive in certain years than others.
And when is our agreement up with the parking operator now, is it?
I'm not sure. I think we did a 5-year with several renewals. Corey, can you comment on that?
We entered into a 5-year agreement with Republic Parking System with 2 3-year possible extensions. Of course, there's a clause in there that we could end that contract in a short period of time if we wanted to.
Okay.
So we can check on that, but probably through 2021.
Then
We'll check that number.
Does the city audit them each year?
No, in fact, we do our own internal monitoring and spot audits every year. We have like a quarterly schedule that we follow, but that's really what the gist of bringing this independent consultant and auditor in for is to do a more thorough audit every other year.
Okay.
I would add that revenues and expenses are audited monthly, every monthly in great detail.
Okay. All righty. Thank you. Any questions? If not, I'd have a motion to approve item C. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Item D is a resolution authorizing the administrator to negotiate and execute contracts to replace social service and senior transportation services. And I guess this was brought about by the demise of Yellow Cab, and we have to fill that void for the balance of the year.
Right. And so what we're really asking the trust here to do is, again, authorize the administrator to negotiate contracts with replacement vendors for Yellow Cab. And, understanding the sensitivity of our customer base, timing being of the essence, we really felt like this was the most efficient way to get service providers back in place to restore those services. I will say staff's done a great job of reacting and preserving and maintaining as many of those services as we possibly can. But we really do need to get additional vendors in place for some of our senior non-emergency medical transportation, our guaranteed ride home, our sheriff fare program. And so our plan is, and we already have actually, received quotes, and we're to the point where we're kind of in negotiations now, at least having some discussions and reviewing the initial quotes. But our plan is to go ahead and get those contracts in place and then bring them to the meeting in the board meeting in May for ratification.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to approve item D? All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Item E is a resolution authorizing the administrator to provide with the off-duty Oklahoma City police officers through the next 5 years our security for the transit center and our streetcars.
Right, so we've really had some good luck within the last few months, actually, in transitioning our security services that we have at the transit center and for the Oklahoma City streetcar from relying heavily on contracted security providers to being able to really have off-duty Oklahoma City police officers provide that security. And, you know, when you look at law enforcement and security personnel, I think we'd all agree that, you know, a sworn officer providing that security service at our facilities is, you know, probably the highest level of service we can achieve within our community. And so we're really looking forward to and appreciative of that relationship, being able to have Oklahoma City police officers really handle our security. So what this item is doing is it's actually asking the trust to waive the competitive bidding for security, because obviously we have one source of off-duty police officers. And it is a substantial increase actually over the last time we requested the trust's authorization to do this, because at that time we were basically using off-duty police officers to fill in or, you know, not be our primary security service, where in this case they would be. So we'll be reducing our expenditure on the contracted service side, and expenditures will increase in what, you know, we're funding for off-duty police officer security.
Is there actually a set fee for off-duty police officers, or is this actually a negotiated contract with?
Yeah, they're essentially they're essentially a vendor to Cotpa at that point, and I believe the rate is $40 per hour is what the rate is for the off-duty officers.
Okay. All right. Any questions? If not, I'd have a motion to approve item E.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Thank you. Item F is approval of a service agreement with Herzog Transit. I guess this was for the addition of a supervisor, or what did you?
Yes, what we're asking the trust to consider is approving this amendment in order to add an additional supervisor to the Herzog Transit Service team. With approval of this item, we will actually have 6 supervisors for the streetcar operations, and really the need for this additional supervisor allows us to make sure, particularly during our peak times, that we have a supervisor able to go out to the field and react to issues that occur, you know, along the route, while always maintaining presence of a supervisor in the control room. And I know you guys have all, I know the trust has all seen that control room. There's at least 3 large displays, visual displays of information showing where the vehicles are at. The SCADA system is displayed. That person in that control center is reacting to phone calls and radio traffic. So it's really a situation where you know, you have to have someone in that control room, and then with approval of this amendment, we'll have more supervisors that we can use to put in the field when needed. We'll just say that the way we plan to fund this is basically making a slight reduction to the contingency that we have in our streetcar operations budget, and a slight reduction in a line item we have for allowances for other unexpected expenses, such as overhead contact wire repairs, significant snow or ice removal. So we believe we can manage it within our existing budget.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion to approve item F?
Move approval.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Our last item on the items is approval of a streetcar lease and operations agreement between Cotpa and the City of Oklahoma City. And I guess my explanation from Jason, you know, that Cotpa owns all its other property except the streetcars, I guess, being funded by MAPS. The city owns the streetcars. So we're leasing them and operating for the city of Oklahoma City.
Right. Yeah, so to your point, it's really, a formality in formalizing that arrangement that the system's owned by the city, Cotpa will be the operator, also specifies that Cotpa will retain the revenues to help offset the operations.
All right. Any questions?
Is that the same relationship we have with the boats?
No. No, like I said, with our garages and our other transit assets, they're all Cotpa owned. So this is a little bit different arrangement. That's the need for the agreement.
I feel a little better. There's one item in there that I had some questions on, and with two councilmen and the city manager on the board, then I feel a little more comfortable with it. Okay. All right. Any questions? If not, do I have a motion to approve item G?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you.
Chris, you know we're only 2 of 9.
I understand, but two very influential now. So.
We'll see.
All right. Next item is ratification of our claims and payroll. Do any of the trustees have any questions on any of that? If not, I would have a motion to ratify.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? Then our financial reports for the budget to actual for the 8 months ended February 28th. Can't believe we're almost through a fiscal year again.
Yes, it is going by fast. So just a few comments, and I'll actually limit my comments to the transportation operations and the parking operations budget to actual. I know we still have a few presentations to go here in today's meeting. So I would direct your attention to page 2. This is the transportation operations budget to actuals, and really would just like to draw your attention on the revenue side to the federal grant revenue. We've been talking, excuse me, over the last couple of months about how due to timing and basically the government shutdown, we got behind on our grant reimbursements. In fact, when we looked at this report last month that was through January, we actually showed about a $2.2 million deficit in that federal grant reimbursement. And you can see that since that time, we're now back. We're caught up on our draws. We're actually at about 98% of what we had anticipated, so just actually less than $90,000 variance now from our budget. And would like to acknowledge the finance staff for their work in getting that done. It was, as you can imagine, it's like the FTA's back open, so start pushing the requests. And so I really would like to acknowledge the finance staff for getting that handled as quickly as they did. Directing your attention to the expenditure section, you can see we continue to see significant savings in personnel services, but also want to point out the other services and fees. This is at least 2 consecutive months where we've shown to be over budget in excess of $100,000 in that other service and fee category. A lot of that has to do with when we develop the budget, we look at past expenditures and we do try to, kind of plot out based on the month how much we typically spend. And we've just been a little bit off on, our estimate versus our actual expenditures in terms of how much we're spending each month. But if you look at the total expenditures to date of just under $3.3 million, that's about 62% of our budget, and we're actually, at least looking at this financial, about 67% of the way through the fiscal year. So I would say even though we show to be over budget, we anticipate, based on our current trend, being okay at the end of the year. And then the last thing, just directing your attention to the operating income. Our revenues are in excess of expenditures by about $1.3 million through 8 months of the fiscal year. And then just a couple of quick comments on the parking operations on page 3. I did, again, just want to remind the trust that the budget amount that you see now does reflect the budget amendment that was approved, I believe, 2 months ago now, where we basically backed out the expenses and revenues remaining for the Santa Fe parking garage. We also programmed in the proceeds from the sale of the Santa Fe parking garage. And we do continue to see monthly contract revenue coming in under budget. In fact, you can see through 8 months, our monthly contract revenue is about $250,000 less than what we had expected. One of the things we're monitoring very closely is, our overall occupancy and parker count with monthly contract parking. We were not successful in moving as many parkers from the Santa Fe parking garage to the Cox Center garage as really what we had thought. Some of those parkers that were displaced found other places to park. So we're monitoring that very, very closely. Staff is, as Corey mentioned, he and his staff, they look at the expenditures and revenues monthly. So we'll continue to keep the trust updated on that. With that said, directing your attention to the operating income, the very bottom line there, still through 8 months of the year, our revenues are $2.2 million in excess of our expenses.
Has Continental have they moved all their employees out of the Cox to the Santa Fe?
Yes.
Okay.
Where did the previous parkers end up if they didn't go to the Cox garage?
We know a good portion of them went to the Broadway Kerr garage, which is just across the street north of the Santa Fe. Mm-hmm. So, it is what it is. More than likely, the location, the people that moved over to there, just simply closer than the Cox Center would be for them.
Thanks.
Be glad to answer any other questions.
All right. Then do I hear a motion to receive our financial reports?
So moved.
All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Our program reports. Streetcar report is first one up.
Morning. How's everyone? Ready for spring, right?
Well, I like your ridership graphs on the streetcar.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Awesome. So good morning. I missed everyone last month. Had the opportunity to go to Tucson, Arizona to be part of a panel and present to the Streetcar Coalition annual conference there. So happy to be back. Happy to see all these smiling faces. So like you mentioned, March was a good month for us. We'll jump right into the presentation here. So we have been working with traffic engineering and traffic ops to maximize our existing signalization and to help choose the absolute best signals to move forward with our phase 3 of transit signal prioritization. Obviously the last thing we want to do is waste money installing transit signal prioritization on a signal where if we had made small programming changes, we could maximize that signal. So we're working with engineering and ops to make sure that we're making the best decisions moving forward. We've been walking in alignment with Public Works and Traffic Ops and Engineering, opening up cabinets and helping to make the final decision for our transit signal prioritization. So the equipment has been ordered and it's on site, and so as soon as we make that final decision, we'll be able to move forward with getting it installed. It's a pretty quick install. We'll be able to install all 3 signals within 1 or 2 nights, and then we'll start testing, and then we should be able to come back with the results from the new installs. As you can imagine, as the weather starts to warm up, we start to see more and more outdoor events going on. You can see these are some of the events that we had the opportunity to work with in the month of March. And Kristen's constantly communicating with event organizers to get details of these events as they're coming to light. And obviously we always work with OCPD, Lieutenant George, Master Sergeant S.J., and Master Sergeant Jesse Butts to make sure that we're always maximizing the safety while still making it fun and entertaining for the event goers and organizers. Some of the things that we do to maintain that safety is we have OCPD officers at intersections. Say there's a marathon going on and the streetcar may be crossing through that marathon. We always have OCPD officers at those intersections to help maintain that safety there. One of the fun events that's coming up here pretty quick, April 28th, we've been working with the Oklahoma City Memorial Marathon to develop a plan. The think most of you are aware that the marathon course has changed for this year. So we've been working with them to develop that plan. So right now, our plan is to start service. It's on a Sunday. We'll be starting service at 4 a.m., and we'll be running until 6 a.m., getting those marathon runners from their hotels to the starting line. And then from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., we'll be suspending service while the race is going on. And we'll be working with Lieutenant George, and as soon as we can get back into service, she'll give us the green light, and we'll start service again. So if we can start sooner than 10 a.m., we will. But obviously the most important thing there is safety. And then me and Kristen got a chance to work with the Oklahoma City Pro-Am Classic. It's coming up in May. So in this picture here, the purple line there is the Oklahoma City streetcar route. The red line is the existing Pro-Am circuit race. So you can see as the race comes northbound on Robinson there, it'll be crossing the tracks, going westbound on 9th Street, and then going up to 10th Street, where it would be traveling on top of the tracks going back to Broadway. So Kristen and I worked with them to redesign that route, and the redesigned route there is that green route. And so what happens is they'll be racing down Broadway, going westbound on 8th, and then northbound on Robinson, and then looping back around to Broadway. So with this revised route, they never actually cross the tracks. They're always running parallel or not even on the same route as the streetcar. So no service interruption there. Still be able to maintain the race for that day. It's actually, it's a 1/10 of a mile shorter, so it's nearly the exact same distance. So that worked out really well with us and the Pro-Am's Classic there.
What is, I'm sorry, I don't know what the Pro-Am.
Yeah, sorry about that. So it's actually cyclists racing. And so one of the things I was excited about is this big sweeping curve at the top. If you want to go see some cool racing, go set up there. You'll be able to see these cyclists as they're going around these. Yeah, I mean, they're cooking it. So, yeah, check it out. It's pretty awesome. All right, ridership. So this is our ridership for weekday service, Saturday service, and Sunday service since week 1 all the way up to week 14. Obviously, if you look at the graph here, you can see a little bit of a dip there in February, and then we start ramping back up in March in week 11, 12, 13, and 14. We feel that, weather played a big part of that, mostly in weeks 8, 9, and 10 there. Those were those times in February where we had super, super cold weather, ice storms, snowstorms, and we were still able to maintain service, but when it's that cold, a lot of people just stay home where it's warm, which I don't blame them.
You were just in Tucson, you said?
I was, yes.
What do they, I've been thinking about this lately, this weather, the winter and the summers. Does their ridership dip in the summer when the desert is punishing them out there? Like, what is that? Are we just going to, should we just expect that when the weather is at these sorts of like dipping winter and then extreme summers that people just don't take public transportation as much? Is that a trend nationwide, worldwide? I don't know.
I would say the cold weather and putting a decreased ridership is pretty much a trend. We've seen that. Milwaukee's dealing with that. As far as the heat and Tucson, they've got a different setup there. Their main ridership is the college. Mm-hmm. And so as soon as college lets out, they actually cut their service back. Some of their operators go home for the summer. Like, their service gets cut way back, and their ridership sees a pretty big drop there. So I wouldn't necessarily be able to comment exactly on that because of their service change during the summer. But I would suspect that we would see more riders being outside with the heat. And plus, we're not punished as much as Tucson.
Well, and, when we look at just our transit system overall, we see that. It's typical. Year in and year out, the winter, the colder months, those are always the lowest ridership, regardless of mode, at least for us here in Oklahoma and, comparable climates, I guess. So, but actually, summertime is our strongest ridership. And on the bus side, I would expect it to be on the streetcar as well.
And we worked really hard with Brookville to make sure that the AC units on our streetcars are top-notch. So, I mean, if you need a place to escape the heat, streetcar's the place to be.
How's the ridership been on Thunder games?
I'm sorry?
On Thunder games, how's the ridership been?
It's great. Yeah, it's it's exactly where you'd expect it to be. It's
Where are
really, really good.
people, are they parking up north and eating and then going to the game, or
Yep.
what do you see?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're seeing. Yeah, exactly as predicted. And we'll see the arena stop. It's maxed out, and we're picking up everybody. And then there's a streetcar right behind it. Our operations group does a really good job of spacing out the streetcars and watching the game as it's coming to a close. And they'll have a streetcar right there at the platform as the first wave of people are coming out from the arena, and then they'll max out that streetcar, they'll roll away, and then the next streetcar is just a few minutes behind it. So they do a really good job of keeping track of the game and when the game's letting out and getting people to where they need to be. Does that
Jesse?
answer your question? Sorry.
Oh,
Did that answer your question?
yeah.
Good. On the, one of the criticisms we got right away was that the time estimates, at the different stops was not accurate. And in those early days when it was just so crowded and we were first kind of getting our feet under us, we were, way off at times. So how have we been doing on that?
We're doing really, really well. So right now our average time between stops is about 11 minutes on peak. And so obviously the GPS is what feeds that pylon to give our our next time arrivals. And so the main thing is keeping that streetcar moving, right? And so that's why we're doing some of the changes that we do, where we're adding the enhanced pavement markings with where you stay behind the line, with the transit signal prioritization. So as long as that streetcar is moving, we're updating the times. And then one of the other things that we're doing is we're making it so that one of the things that we failed at the beginning was making sure that the streetcars were staying logged on and staying logged into the system. And so what we did is we actually set up a reminder in the control center. So this is another thing that the supervisors keep track of, is to go in and double check every 15, 20 minutes, making sure that things are logged in so that you don't drop off and then you don't realize it for an hour and then you have to log back in, and so that time's just not updating. So we're implementing things to make sure that things are moving smoothly, and we're keeping that information updated on the pylons.
So then are you monitoring that on a regular basis then to go, okay, our estimate at this point was, just, spot checking that to say it was said 2 minutes and it ended up being 3 or?
Yeah, absolutely. So we basically monitor everything. So yeah, of course. And then one of the other things that we do is, Michael's really good at, if there's a blockage or something and we anticipate that it's going to be an extended blockage, anything over 10 minutes, we want to make sure that everybody's aware that we may not be moving for more than 10 minutes, say that there's an emergency vehicle on the tracks or something like that. As soon as it's radioed into OCC and we anticipate that it's going to be more than 10 minutes, Michael starts pushing messages out to the pylons. And so, Monday actually we saw where the Bricktown service got suspended because of the contamination, the environmental issue that was out there. So we ran a bus bridge to keep the stops in Bricktown with people moving, but Michael was able to put out a message on the pylons, making sure that riders knew that there was a change in service.
Good. How have we been with the people parking along the streets and parking over the lines and the response time between police and all that? Where are we at with that?
Right. So what we've seen is that most of the time, whenever somebody's parking over a line, it's usually someone from out of state, right? So most of the people that live in Oklahoma City, they've gotten used to it and they know to park behind the lines. And right now, Oliver Robinson has those enhanced pavement markings that we've done. And then at the Mary Gardens, they're there, and we're planning to move forward with installing those enhanced pavement markings for Broadway. That's where we see most of our blockages right now. So in March, we saw about 59 blockages just on Broadway for the month. As far as response time, it depends on how busy OCPD is. Our average response time is between 5 and 10 minutes. They'll show up to the scene. If the car needs to be towed, they'll call for the tow truck, and the contract with OCPD is that the tow truck will be there within 15 minutes. So if everything's running smoothly and a car has to be towed, then we can have a car towed in about 25 to 30 minutes. If OCPD is busy and they can't get to the scene, then that time extends. And then most of the time, actually what happens is, and you probably heard the horn out here just a few minutes ago, the streetcar will, there'll be a blockage, streetcar will stop, they'll start blowing their horn, they'll radio to OCC, let them know that they're blocked, and as they're blowing the horn, people start looking around like, oh yeah, I parked over a line, they'll run back and move their car. And so our average blockage time is actually 5 minutes.
Thank you.
All right. right, so this is one of the new graphs here. You can actually see ridership by day for the month of March. You can see that huge spike there on Saturday. That's actually St. Patrick's Day. And then the week prior to that is spring break, so you can see the ridership increase there. And then actually the ridership after spring break was also very high, and most of that's due to weather. I shouldn't say most of it, but one of the factors is weather. And then obviously just people getting used to the system, seeing how easy it is to ride with the mobile app or the ticket vending machine, and how easy it is to purchase a ticket and ride. Any questions on this one? All right. So starting this Sunday, April 7th, we start our new Sunday, or our proposed Sunday service starting at 7 a.m. We'll be running until 10 p.m. And then Michael, as always, and his team, they do a great job of getting the information out there to people so that people can know what to expect leading up to our new service on Sunday. So this is a picture of groundbreaking, February 7th, 2017. So the mainline contract is set to go, or it went to subcommittee on March 27th, the MAPS 3 Advisory Board on March 28th, and set to go to City Council on April 9th there. I had a quick fact in here I wanted to throw in there. So we are, the entire project from groundbreaking to City Council was 791 days. All right, and then more cool little features here. So these are some of the features that went into the streetcar system, just to kind of elaborate on just how massive the project was. We had 62,000 linear feet of saw cutting, so that's whenever they pour concrete and come back and cut joints into the concrete. We had 27,000 square yards of road subgrade, 9.5 miles of train signal cable. That's just the wires that went into the ground, 9.5 miles of electrical wire. So you can, with these numbers here, you just kind of see just how massive the project was, right? So kind of explains why it took 700 days with all these, just the size of the project. That's it. That completes my presentation. Be happy to answer any questions.
Well, I thought it was said at our christening that this was the largest, longest streetcar system to date. I don't remember the details of what that was.
That's correct, yeah. It's the largest new opening.
New opening.
Yeah, you're correct,
Okay.
yeah. We love being on top. It's great.
All right. Any questions? Jesse, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, now it's time for our parking system report.
Good morning, everyone. I hope to be a little quicker than Jesse. This is our UCO project. In January, you can see we're still in the demo phase. Late March, we have walls in the building. The contractor's doing extremely well in keeping on the schedule. Our public parking signs for the garages, that'll go to the design review committee next week, and then the Board of Adjustments. Show you a couple of pictures of some mock-ups. Just outside the door, the Arts District garage, that's where we're looking to place the sign. Other side of the Arts District garage as you're traveling west on Main Street, Century Center garage, and then the Cox garage. The new convention center, again, will be going to in front of the design review committee in April 18. Bid documents this summer, construction beginning this fall, and opening just before the convention center in the fall of 2020. A couple of pictures, just a refresher of the area, convention center, garage, Omni Hotel. Do need to mention that staff met with the Omni Hotel yesterday morning, and they have blessed all of our conceptual ideas and operations of the garage. There's a view of E.K. Gaylord and 4th Avenue. Some differences to the parking committee presentation. We now have landscaping involved in there, important component of DDRC. And then a picture as you would see the garage looking from the pool deck of the Omni. You'll notice that there's some inconsistencies in the bridge that connects to the convention center. The bridge will seem seamless connecting to the garage. that portion of the picture's inaccurate.
Do we know if they got the design worked out on the tiles, the colored tiles for the attaching to the cables, or?
No,
No.
that's still in progress. Our management study kicked off earlier this week. We met with 4 focus groups, 4.5 focus groups. There was an individual that got confused, so we met with him separately. And then the steering committee. It was a busy, fun day. The focus groups told us what we thought, or what they thought, and we'll address them through the study. Santa Fe parking garage, as we all know, December 14th, when the streetcar was opened, right after we sold the garage. The transition from public to contract-only parking occurred days later. In that process, the owners asked us to come back and reestablish transient parking in the garage, so we've done that. March, they awarded a contract to American Parking. All of us have met, and then on Wednesday, the owner, the new operator, RPS and Cotpa all met, and it was decided that our last day will be May 5th at 11:59 p.m. So we'll walk away from the garage at that point. Any questions?
Any question? No. All right. Thank you. One last report, our rivers, which is the weather's getting, so now your ridership will pick up, I hope.
As a matter of fact, today is day 1 of our
Okay.
ferry service. And at 1 p.m., the 1:15 ferry will be on Facebook Live. So if you're all on Facebook, you can follow us on that. I do want to introduce our new general manager for HMS Ferries and Oklahoma River Cruises, Kyle Cole. Kyle is a native Oklahoman, graduate of OU with a degree in business administration. He has 31 years of experience operating coal construction and remodeling. So he's worked in the public and private sector in the past. He's done design work, implementation, project implementation. So we feel very confident that he's going to be an asset for Oklahoma River Cruises. Okay, so as I said, today is the opening day for Oklahoma River Cruises. In about an hour and a half, they'll start running. The Devon Explorer is still in haul out. It's a huge project to paint a vessel of this size. The picture on the left is after the sanding and smoothing over of all the surfaces, and then on the right you see the very glossy paint that's been applied and being applied. That should wrap up this week, and then we'll be applying the decals, and then it'll be ready for service. The other part of the project, when we ordered our first 2 vessels, they did not come with bow thrusters.
With what?
Bow thrusters.
Oh.
It's propellers towards the front of the ship. I think it's approximately directly below the wheelhouse, and it allows the boat to move sideways. This is something very important for us and became critical when we had the Bricktown landing, which is a much tighter turn and much more difficult to get out of. Also helps us on very windy days to get out of the locks and avoid hitting the lock wall. So several years ago, we installed the bow thrusters. Unfortunately, we didn't install these bars that protect them from debris. Part of our project was to put these bars to keep the large amounts of debris from going in and breaking up those propellers on those bow thrusters. So the picture on the left is the installation, and then on the right is after they're painted. And these are all below the water line, so you might save this picture for future. You won't be able to see them when you're on the boat. Another part of the project is the truing of the drive shafts and replacement of the bearings. And as you see here, the shafts are being trued as we speak, and then a consultant will be brought in to actually install the bearings and reinstall the shafts, so that they have to use a laser to make sure they get them absolutely true. And for Spokies, on March 25th, we took delivery of 25 dockless bicycles. These are B-cycle bicycles, so they work with our existing system. They have a rider interface. They can give turn-by-turn directions. They are powered by a solar panel. Now, these bikes can be locked to any or most bike racks. They don't lock to the really low bike racks, but they lock to all of the city-owned bike racks and most of the bike racks around Oklahoma City. We got these through a CMAQ grant. Our sponsors were Uptown 23rd, Colony Partners, and Downtown Oklahoma City. And we'll have more information about these bikes at our May meeting. These are the graphics. In exchange for their sponsorship, we are allowing these three entities to brand the baskets on the bikes. And so these are samples of the artwork that they provided for us to put on the bikes. Uptown 23rd and Colony Partners, who's the developer of the Page Woodson Apartments, they will each have 10 bikes, and then Downtown OKC sponsored 5 bikes.
So the Uptown 23rd is going to have 10 Spokie's bikes right
Yes.
there. Good.
Yes.
And when does this begin? Sorry.
It'll be in May. We're shooting for the May 3rd, it's the May 3rd or May 5th board meeting, our next board meeting, to have the rollout. They're being assembled right now. I believe they're about halfway through with assembly. I believe they had about 14 bikes done when I was there this morning.
Wonderful. If you wouldn't mind keeping me updated on that. So it's like the entrance into Ward 2, right? And so I love the idea of Spokie's making its way incrementally up north. And then also, what is the ridership looking like with Spokie's now that the scooters are they playing nice with each other, or what's happening?
It has had a bit of an impact on our ridership. It's down, I believe, about 35%. Some of that has to do with weather. The scooters arrived in August, and then it's kind of an introduction going on there. There's a huge impact to begin with. It's starting to slow down a little bit, and we're confident that as the weather gets better, more people might choose to go back to riding a bike as opposed to the scooter. But they've been very cooperative with us. They've just been really good to work with.
The scooters, when did this begin nationally? Was it around the same time that it kind of began here?
It had been going on for at least a year before they came to Oklahoma City. That's when we started working on the ordinance.
And did we start losing all across the country? Were bike share programs similarly affected? Do we know?
I don't know. I really don't know the answer to that. Some of the other cities that have scooters are much larger and more dense than Oklahoma City, which made it a surprise to me that they would want to come to Oklahoma City because $1 to start the scooter and then 15 cents a minute, how could they possibly make enough money to support the staff? But they're getting a lot of rides. But we're not as densely populated. And our bike share system for our size of city is very small. If you go to some of the other cities, they'll have 2,500 bikes to start. And we started, of course, with 50. But, and we're concentrating in this area as opposed to some of the other cities, like Los Angeles has a program that's coordinated with the transportation agency there to reach out to underserved communities. And we just don't have the size of a system to be able to do that just yet.
Driving in this morning, I was competing with skateboards
Oh, really?
on both sides of me.
Oh, wow.
It was me, yeah. No, I'm not that cool.
Jeannie, could you, to Trustee Cooper's point there on, we received the bikes now, we're not looking to really launch them until May. Just talk a little bit about, if you could, just the testing that we're doing, the fact that it's a completely, well, not completely, but very significantly different technology and process than what our dock bikes have.
Sure.
So each of them is equipped with the GPS unit. I know we're doing some testing on that. So
Yeah,
could you just
which
talk about?
brings me to my next slide.
Okay, well, very good then.
The pre-deployment checklist, there's 35 points, and then this checklist is also used for regular maintenance on the bicycles. It's a lot more to deal with than it is on a regular Spokey's bike. You have a solar panel, you've got batteries, each bike has 2 batteries in it. I won't tell you where they are because they're being stolen in LA, and I don't want to see them disappear here. But they have 2 batteries, a solar panel, there's the lights, the functionality of the lights, which are very important. We have, as to the scooters, they're off the street by dark, generally, unless someone manages to their scooter not be found and picked up, but they're generally off the street by dark. Our bikes we get a lot of ridership in Bricktown, all the way up to 2 o'clock in the morning. So I won't tell you why they're riding the bike, but we have a lot of riders in that area till 2 o'clock in the morning. So lights are super important for us, as are the reflectors, the GPS units. As Jason was talking about, just the testing of these bikes is going to take a while. So, and every single bike needs to be tested before it's deployed. And our operator, Josh Vaught with Bicycle Transit Systems, is the most meticulous person when it comes to the quality of the bikes. So we're looking forward to seeing a really strong deployment and very safe bikes out on the street when this
This
goes
is
out.
an uneducated question, but is the solar plant, are they self-propelled with the solar panel, or is it just for the lights and the Jeep?
The solar panel and the batteries help with the technology that's on the bike.
Okay.
So when you walk up to the bike, if you're one of our members, like a monthly member or an annual member, you can just take your fob and swipe it, and you've checked out the bike. If you don't have that, then you use your cell phone and the app, and you can check out the bike. Now, once you're on the bike, you can get turn-by-turn directions actually on the handlebars. So if you're a visitor and you say you want to go to a particular business that's somewhere around the area, you can plug it in there, and it'll give you turn-by-turn directions to that location. So we're very excited about that feature. And that's what the solar panel and the batteries are there to maintain. Also, it powers the GPS so that we can go find the bike if it ends up headed out I-35 to Guthrie. We'll be able to find it. And then the bike becomes unavailable once the battery drops to 25%. So someone can't get on it and then ride it until we can no longer find it. So a lot of features put in there to make sure we can recover the bikes, that the bikes are safe, and that people can easily check out the bikes. And that is all I have for you today. Be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Any questions? All right, thank you. Well, we had quite a few items to cover today, but we kind of got through them. Any items from the trustees? Jason? Yes, okay.
Yes. I did want to take an opportunity to thank all the participating city departments and entities that helped us with our full-scale emergency exercise for the Oklahoma City streetcar, actually last Friday. So you might have seen some of that in the news or whatever, but again, we couldn't do it without police, fire, IMSA, Public Works, ODOT, our staff. I know I'm forgetting probably a few folks, Jesse. But anyway, it was, in our opinion, a very successful event. You just can't really think about all the things you gain from a full-scale emergency exercise like that as you go through your planning stages until you're in it, and then it's always enlightening, and it makes us a better and safer operator. So again, just thanks to everybody for helping us with that event.
All right, thank you. Well, if there's nothing else, then we're adjourned. Thank you.